Did you get the letter from?
Which letter was that? I opened up a... Oh, yeah, but they were asking for more than's required.
Next time run copies for everyone. Oh, I hope there's no old time.
Okay, open session. Okay, so next time I won't. Okay.
Or if you don't want to.
Okay. Sounds good.
The Baron guy's already.
It's 7 o'clock now. Shall we?
Is ready?
All
Is
right,
that right?
7 o'clock, we'll begin the meeting. If everybody would please rise for the pledge.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Cliff Rebuffo,
Here.
Art Christie,
Yeah.
Joanne Kalb, John Horn,
Here.
Alan Shiner,
Here.
Sam Spada,
Here?
Vivian Welton.
Here.
Okay, did everybody get a chance to look over the minutes from the previous meeting?
Yeah.
Comments or corrections? Nothing, I'll take a motion to approve.
So moved.
All in favor?
You need a second.
Second, I was gonna say.
I can. I wasn't there.
You can all in favor.
Oh, all in favor? I'm very confused. Yeah.
Cliff is your second.
Oh, okay. Sorry.
Your turn.
All right, communications. I believe we received an email from Mary Herman, who was here tonight. Do you have a copy of it? Would you like to read it?
You're gonna make this a part of your minutes. You don't have to make notes.
Okay.
Unless there's.
She's standing.
Good Lord.
All right, well, first of all, I would like to apologize for talking out of turn and my outburst at the last couple of meetings. My intent is not to harass the board or disrupt the meeting, but I am frustrated. I suppose I do not understand when the proper time is for the public to ask questions. Is there a public comment period at each meeting? Having served on several committees over the past decades, I believe it is not only vital that the community be heard, but that such dialogue fosters community trust and knowledge. As the Shandaken Planning Board members are aware, the town of Shandaken has appointed a committee to review and revise the town's comprehensive plan. It is vital that the members of this committee, of which I am chair, be able to work with and gain insight from the Shandaken Planning Board so that we can effectively do our work. While the comments I have made here are mine personally, I do research. The research I have done is pertinent to my work with that committee. Therefore, my understanding of the zoning laws is important, and I appreciate any assistance the Shandaken Planning Board can give me to achieve this. I found it very confusing that the hearing for the mobile plaza was scheduled, as it did not appear that the site plan was complete, and there were many questions that needed to be answered. The plans were not exhibited for the public beforehand, as they had been at hearings that I have attended in the past. I do not believe I was the only one who was unaware members of the community were expected to go to town hall before the hearing to see the plans. I would like to know when and where it is appropriate for the community to get answers to their questions and concerns, if not at a public meeting. Unfortunately, I was unable to get sufficient answers at the meeting, and I think now I have more questions than before. I've spent a lot of time researching procedures and the laws on my own to try and get this matter straight. I understand why the Shandaken Planning Board had the hearing given the time frame allotted in the law. However, it is a disadvantage to the community to be asked to make final comment on something that is not final. I do not even know if the hearing is still open, as the plan was to be updated again after the last regular planning board meeting. So I am respectfully asking that you consider my concerns before the next meeting. My first concern, there is a clear lack of support for a Dunkin' Donuts drive-through in Pine Hill. Initially, just about everybody in Pine Hill was supportive of the plaza reopening because many residents relied on the laundromat, the deli, and the food store. While it is in the applicant's right to sell whatever he wants, the lack of nutritious food and deli refutes the public support that was offered. I inquired with Nathan's Famous Incorporated and was told they have no record of a Nathan's Famous franchise ever being in Pine Hill. I was told that their hot dogs and promotional materials, such as signage, can be purchased through commercial food distributors, and the drive-through component upsets the community as it is out of character. Next, gas stations are a prohibited use in Hamlet commercial zoning. The building appears to be non-conforming and may have already been expanded to such limits. 11610, District Schedule of Use Regulations. Gas stations are prohibited in HC and not allowed by special permit. I have questions as to whether the applicant should have been sent to the ZBA in the first place. Or do they need to come before the planning board for a referral? Did the previous owners have a special permit or a use variance for a gas station, or was it just an accepted as is after Pine Hill disincorporated in 1985? The zoning law states under non-conforming uses, they shall not be enlarged or extended by more than 50%, altered, extended, reconstructed, or restored, except as provided in this article, or placed on a different portion of the lot or parcel of land occupied by such a use. On the effective date of this chapter, nor shall any external evidence of such a use be substantially increased by any means whatsoever, that if a building is not conforming, it may not be made more non-conforming. The applicant seeks to increase the size of this building by 40%, parentheses, possibly allowed with a use variance if not moved, and parentheses, and placed on a different portion of the lot, I put in parentheses, clearly not allowed. And the appearance of his plans show external evidence of such a use is increased, not only by the increased size of the buildings, but by the increase of non-conforming gas pumps from 4 to 12, a 200% increase in the number of pumps. In addition, if the current building is in such a condition that it is not able to be remodeled, then the use should be discontinued, as it is used as part of a gas station complex that is prohibited in a Hamlet commercial in the first place. It violates the spirit of the law if a building can be torn down and rebuilt on a different portion of the lot and enlarged when the original building or use is non-conforming. Such actions would encourage continuing and expanding non-conforming uses, not disallow them. Isn't it the objective of having non-conforming building/use laws not be rebuilt so that they would be phased out and we would have no non-conforming buildings or uses? Owners who do maintain buildings that are non-conforming can retain those buildings and uses since they took care to maintain the structure, knowing that they could not be rebuilt from scratch. There are enough gas stations in 20 miles in either direction of Pine Hill to fill the fueling needs of the area. I have lived in Pine Hill for 30 years and I have seen many changes to the plaza over these years. Pine Hill disincorporated in 1985, and at that time, the building would have been subjected to Shandaken zoning laws, if not already so. The plan shows that the existing building has a 10-foot setback, making it a non-conforming building, in addition to the prohibited gas station in an HC zone. The Perlmans had added to their business building several times since I have lived in the hamlet, including but not limited to the beer cave on the east end of the property, the outdoor eating area that has since been enclosed, and the conversion of the laundromat from what was once a small home. I would like to know how these expansions are calculated in now that the new owner wants to expand even more. How big were the buildings at the plaza at the time the zoning on the parcel became effective? How much have the Perlmans already altered, expanded, reconstructed, or restored the non-conforming building up to or beyond this 50% limit before selling it to Aerostar? How much square footage were these additions? This needs to be answered because if these additions exceed 50% and Aerostar is allowed to go forth with their plans, wouldn't that set a precedent that each subsequent owner of the property would be able to rebuild, move, and enlarge non-conforming buildings? When is the 50% increase reached? Does each owner get their own 50%? Indeed, the case law on the subject supports this. The court noted that the non-conforming uses of property are generally viewed as detrimental to the local zoning schemes and are against public policy. Therefore, a zoning board is within its power and the courts will enforce a municipality's reasonable circumspection of the right to expand the volume or intensity of a prior non-conforming use. And that's the City of Glen Clove against Starring Earth Enterprises in 2011. My experience on non-conforming buildings was that I was not permitted to address at the planning board. That I was not permitted to address the planning board about stems from the following situation. A property located at 31 or 34 Academy Street, Pine Hill, an old boarding house, was a non-conforming building, locally known as the Tilton Hilton. Investors bought it and wanted it to put 6 apartments into this building. The building had a small footprint and it was not suitable for 6 apartments. I had a conversation at that time with Art Christie, and he told me as zoning officer he had removed the condemned porch on this building, and because it was non-conforming and as it was now demolished, that the applicant had no right to rebuild that porch. Also, it was my understanding that if the building was taken completely down, they could not rebuild it as it was. They would have to rebuild according to the current setbacks. The house next door to the Tilton Hilton was owned by Matt Strength. He told me that his experience was that he remodeled his house in its original footprint, as he could not take down his house and rebuild it differently, because his house was also non-conforming. I can tell you many stories where this is basically common knowledge to anyone who is a contractor in Shandaken. My husband and I were interested in buying the Tilton Hilton property so we could convert it into a storage area, as we do not have a garage. But then the owners took the whole building down, losing the footprint, and there was nothing to remodel. We were told it is now basically an unbuildable lot and would not have been able to build a suitable building within the current setback. Okay? Now, as I said before, Pine Hill has a historic district with 5 historic sites. The community went through a lot of work to have Pine Hill declared a historic district, and 5 of the historic sites in Shandaken happen to be in Pine Hill. A drive-through donut shop conflicts with the character of the immediate community and Shandaken's attractiveness. Community character can absolutely be taken into consideration when issuing a special permit. It was very disingenuous for the applicant to state that in the comments to the Ulster County Planning Board that the gas station is a quarter mile from the town. when it is literally within the historic hamlet boundaries. And I don't mean the historic district, I mean the historic boundaries of Pine Hill, because it's something like 84 acres or something. The project does not meet the 50-foot setback requirements as required in the Shandaken zoning code. At the 7/12/23 planning board meeting, the applicant's engineer admits that most of the parking lot is state land, and indeed the concrete over the tanks and where the pumps sit cross New York state land. The applicant seeks to move the pumps but creates a new nonconformity by increasing the number of pumps by 200% from 4 to 12. At the very least, the Shandaken Planning Board should refer this matter to the Zoning Board of Appeals so that these questions can be further investigated and evaluated. Furthermore, the applicant has stated that he is not interested in installing electric charging stations, which would fill a need for green technology for the future, something other committees in Shandaken are working towards. This is the type of growth we should be encouraging. The setbacks and parking do not comply with the zoning code. 116-58B2, no parking area shall encroach on any portion of a required front yard or within 50 feet of New York State Route 28 or 25 feet of any other public right-of-way, whichever shall be less restrictive. The parking in front of the laundromat is right up to the property line, leaving no setback. The area, and then this is part of the zoning code too. The area used of motor vehicles, including display and storage, except access drives thereto, as well as any structures, shall not encroach on any required yard area, and further provided that no building should be erected closer to any street or lot line. And that is about the special uses for the gas stations. No fuel pump shall be located within 25 feet of any lot line or within the required side or front yard, whichever shall be more restricted. The station layout shall eliminate the necessity of any vehicles backing into a public right-of-way. Okay. And then I went on to say the redevelopment of this site conflicts with the current comprehensive plan for the town of Shandaken. Would you like me to read from the comprehensive plan?
Sure.
Okay. July 2005. Above all, we want to preserve the artistic, cultural, educational, and historic assets of our town. We recognize that the Catskill Park and the Forest Preserve, the Bel Air Ski Center, and the scenic value of routes 28 and 42 are our centerpiece assets. We want to preserve the character of these corridors as clusters of commercial enterprises separated by open spaces and with a minimum of roadside advertisement and with non-intrusive signage. By no means are we against developers. We will work in good faith to any cooperative developer to ensure that their proposed plans and developments conform to the criteria set forth in this comprehensive plan and the existing ordinances of the town. Most rural communities, like the town of Shandaken, were originally established without comprehensive plans, review boards, or regulatory controls. The historic hamlets and natural features which shaped the growth of our rural roads remain from the era of initial development and combine to create a picturesque environment that has formed the basis for a long-standing tourist-based economy, land use and development limitations. The present land use pattern has been influenced by the historic pattern of hamlet development, highway-oriented transportation, and state land ownership. The town includes 12 hamlets, 6 delineated areas, each with a distinct character. And within the implementation plan, a natural, historic, and cultural features and resources, land use plan, zoning law, development, site plan regulations. The town of Shandaken land use plan, zoning law, and development site plan regulations should be updated to ensure the natural, historic, and cultural features that are important to the town and that are protected. And the priority on that is immediate. Specific design standards and review procedures should be established for structures that may detract from the character of the hamlets, villages, or overall community. The priority on that, short term. Development patterns, hamlets. Hamlet revitalization should be promoted and coordinated through a use of available loan and grant programs to encourage business development and building renovation. New development within the hamlets should be compatible with the existing hamlet development as appropriate to the capacity of sewer and water systems. Buildings and signs should be consistent with the architecture and rural character of the area in terms of design and materials. The Route 28 corridor. Between the hamlets, Route 28 is the image of the central Catskills. Long views of mountains, glimpses of mountain streams, open fields, and wooded hillsides, and a varied amount of small, diverse structures and uses glimpsed at 55 miles per hour. In general, development along this corridor should not be extensively promoted and should be limited to small cottage-type businesses. The design principle for Route 28 should be to blend man-made development into the natural landscape to the maximum extent possible and to prevent an increase in development intensity in terms of physical and visual impacts. Buildings and signs should be consistent with the architecture and rural character of the area in terms of design and materials. D, historic resources. Shandaken has 7 sites which are listed in the National Register of Historic Places. The Zen Mountain Monastery in Mount Tremper, excuse me for not trying to pronounce that word, I butcher it. Phoenicia Railroad Station in Phoenicia, which is the Empire State Railway Museum. District Schoolhouse number 14 in Pine Hill. The Elm Street Stone Bridge in Pine Hill. The Mill Street Stone Bridge in Pine Hill. The Morton Memorial Library, Pine Hill. Tremper Mountain Fire Tower in Mount Tremper, and not in the plan, the Ulster House, Pine Hill. So that's 8 altogether. The 5 of the 8 sites are in Pine Hill. So if you read this far or listened to me this far, I sincerely thank you for that. And thank you for any consideration you have given my comments. Your feedback will likewise be appreciated. Mary Herman. Thank you.
Okay, since you were called out by name, Art, to give you a chance to respond.
I have something to say since I was called out by name. Mary's 100% right. What took place between us, but there were some facts left out. The porch that she said it was falling off
Right.
and it was damaged. And I stated to the owner, 65.4, when a code enforcement officer shall, on the basis of information received by him or other of his own investigation, be the opinion that the building is or may become dangerous or unsafe to the general public, it is open at doorways and windows, making it accessible to the object, attraction, and persons under 18 years old, as well as vagrants and other trespassers. It is become a place of rodent infestation, presence, other dangers, and purposes for which is unlawfully used. He shall cause and make an inspection of the report. And I did that. And I told the gentleman, I wrote everything down. Everything, it was written down when I was in that job. I told him that he had to get a demolition permit before he took it off. He had to give me measurements of the size of it and the height of it, and he never came back.
Right.
He took it off and he just never came back. So without me receiving the information I asked him for, I told you that he can't do it.
Right, isn't that what I said?
Yeah, well, you said that I said that he couldn't replace it, and he could have replaced it had he followed the right procedure. Okay,
Okay,
so,
I don't see
He came back with a vacant lot.
No,
If you get a demo
it
permit,
wasn't a vacant lot.
no, he tore the,
or the porch, if you had a demo permit, that's a record of the existing structure.
That's right.
Without the demo permit, you're
Yes.
starting from 0.
and he never,
That's
he never
an
came
important
back.
Part of the process.
So I just wanted to make that
No,
clear.
I understand.
So I'd like to address a few of your points in that letter. So they were good points. So you asked, is the meeting open? So I've been on this board a little over a decade. And my experience in this has been People care very little about what we do here until it affects them, and then they care very deeply about what we're doing here. So therefore, they're not familiar with the process as we are. So the meetings are open to be attended by the public at all times, and as many people know, they're also broadcast on the Spectrum to be watched at home and YouTube, and there's a number of ways to access a record of the meetings or attend. They're open for public comment only during public hearings. In this particular case, we closed this public hearing at the last meeting. As far as accessing the plans, they've always been available. This is the way it's been as long as I've been on the board. They've been accessible through the zoning or building department. You could come in and see them at any time before them. But people have to watch. You have to pay attention. We send out notice before a public hearing to the abutters and only the abutters. We don't notify the entire town. If you want to be involved, you have to pay attention. We're talking about requiring PDF submissions. This is not something we required in the past. The feeling was that not everybody has access to a computer, and we were trying to be as open and inclusive as possible. I feel like we're turning a corner in society where requiring a PDF submission is actually, in many cases, easier than requiring hard copy submission. So I think going forward, that's something I'd like to include in all applications. As far as the previous uses approval, I can't answer any of those questions. I was not involved in the town at that time. I don't know if anybody else can speak to that, but that was a long time ago.
The use of the parcel when the Perlmans owned it, is that what we're talking about? So it's a pre-existing non-conforming use. They never had any special use permits. They got 2 special permits from the planning board, obviously not this one. One in '93 to convert an existing retail space into a laundromat, and one in 2001 to put an addition for a cooler, I think.
What was that retail?
I have the paperwork, I can make you copies, I didn't do that. It was existing retail space.
Oh, I'm sorry.
A workshop, I think it was called a workshop as well. It was 1993.
I remember when
The records are here, I have them. You're welcome to, I'll make you copies, whatever you'd like. But that's all I know. As far as the use is considered, they did not have a special use permit because one was not required. This is a pre-existing non-conforming use.
Most of it predated zoning, I'm assuming.
Yes. There's a map in the file from 1975 that shows the structures, where they're located now, in the footprint that they have now.
Special permit and special use permit.
No, I know.
Those are the same things.
I'm just leaving out use once in a while. I'll stop doing
But they did get a special permit, so they did.
They got a special, they got site site plan approval to convert an existing retail into a laundromat, and then they got site plan approval to add the cooler onto the new building. There are records, maps, it's all there.
That was the expansion of the.
I just don't,
It wasn't treated as such.
I don't recall that building being,
Well, you can go through the records if you
no,
want,
I
but I
understand what
can't.
it says, but it was a house.
All we have are the records, Mary, I don't. So, as to the comprehensive plan, I mean, as you stated, it looks towards clusters of development interspersed by rural stretches. I think it's a pretty long stretch between gas stations, and, I mean, if you need to buy a gallon of milk and you live in Pine Hill, as you know, it's a good drive.
I haven't been to that store since my son was 16, he's now 42.
Okay,
Nobody's had, you know,
that's your personal use
I
pattern.
understand
I'm
that,
just
but-
basing this on what I, you know,
getting the demographics we have along this.
on ranges.
And let me be clear, I'm not saying it's the expansion of everything, making it bigger.
So that brings me to my next point, the expansion of the use over 50%. It's a valid concern. And how do you guys feel about that? One option we have is to send them to the ZBA to have it reviewed by them. They could decide if that fits in. That's what we have to do.
Yeah, that's probably the best idea.
Yeah, I support the proposal, but I only want to support it if there's a good legal foundation. If it's got to go ZBA with our, I certainly recommend it for approval.
All right, so let's recommend that
you go before the ZBA for an area variance for an increase in the size of the use.
No, they're
No.
not doing, this isn't a use issue.
It's not a use, yeah, the use is pre-existing. It's just, it's a question of the size.
The expansion of the exterior gasoline station by more than 50%.
Right.
4 pumps to 12 pumps is an expansion of the use. The use is getting bigger, it's expanding.
No, a use variance is for a different use. This is not a this is not a different
That's how the
use.
zoning board would solve it, that non-conforming use, it would be a use variance. That's what
anyone-
it is. It's
Can
not an
either of
area.
you offer clarification on this?
She's not going to agree with me. I think it requires an area variance and relief of 116-58A1. I believe that's an area variance, but I can't,
That's what I thought.
because it has to do with the alteration or extension of existing structures. It's got
It's
to do
not a-
with,
But the use is
It's not a
getting
new-
bigger, the use is,
Excuse me, can I?
It's not a new use, go ahead,
Can I
please.
ask, I didn't run the numbers on the building, but based on what commenter just said in this non-public hearing, there was a 40% increase. That's not as much as a 50%, which is allowed.
do you want my
So
math?
I would argue,
What is that?
My math?
if that's true,
Yeah, please.
I would argue that that doesn't need a variance by the regulations. And as far as the pumps are concerned, I don't know that they're covered by the zoning exactly because they're not a building. I think it's up to the planning board. I'm trying to say, you know, if we want this thing to open in a reasonable period of time, that those are how we would look at it. Obviously, it's up to the planning board to make the determination.
All right, so you're suggesting that increasing the number of pumps is not the same as expanding a footprint?
It's not the same as expanding a building, which
Right,
is what
'cause it's
most
not a
zoning
building.
is about, and most of those regulations were originally about. So
Okay.
I'd say it's up to the board.
What does she
how they
show
feel
on
about it.
hers?
excuse me.
It's 40%?
Can you?
I'm showing
Hold-
roughly,
hold-
can
hold
you
on,
wait?
please.
I'm showing roughly a 25% increase in the footprint of the gasoline, the station with the retail building.
Yeah.
And it was like, I think it's up 75% for the laundromat. If you count the
Yes.
pumps, that's a 200% increase. 4 to 12 is 200%.
Okay.
There might be a rough estimate on the land on there as well.
From 4 to 12 is 300%.
Yeah.
Thank you so
But that
much.
might not be the baseline on which an expansion should be considered. The number of those elements is probably not what was anticipated in the code. It was thinking about square footage. That's the point that the applicant's engineer just made.
But Ms. Herman
Don't
said
argue
that
with them.
the
Don't argue.
gas station
Don't let him.
in and of itself is a non-conforming use.
I think we've heard that point.
So your calculations are a 25% increase in the building,
The main building.
the ma-
Main
and,
building.
and, well, what
75.
if you add the two together? Where is that?
The laundromat is also getting larger, that's 75%.
It's going from 1,200 square feet to,
Okay,
no,
so
it's not.
that's-
It's going from, it's on
And
there.
where is the total?
That's
So-
70, yeah, that's 75%, the .757.
No, but we're, add the two together.
You're at exactly 50%.
It's exactly 50%.
For the structures, yes.
For the structures, it's 50%, so the pumps are more, but the structures
And-
are 50%. So the question is, do the pumps count or not?
And does the land
Oh.
count? I think I would address that as well.
The what?
The land.
As far as like the parking lot. So the parking
cleared
lot,
area,
the
right.
parking lot is getting larger, the pumps are getting larger, the usable area is getting larger, but the
That's a fair
building-
point.
The structures are increasing by 50%. So they're right on the structures, but higher on the
The
others.
code doesn't say anything about the number of pumps.
No.
It just says increased by 50%. So it's a question whether it all gets wrapped in or not.
It seems to me the gas station just happens to have pumps on it. So you really, if the gas station area has
Where
expanded,
is the code?
that counts.
It's
rather than the number of pumps. I assume the
It doesn't
gas,
say, it just
the
says
gas
40%.
station is
Yeah.
expanding quite a bit.
Yeah.
Doesn't break it down to what?
Excuse me?
They might have
No, don't, you can't open it.
No,
Well, you can send it to the zoning board, right, which we're gonna do. And
If we don't have the authority,
you can see what
We
they
can
think,
ask them
yeah.
for interpretation on the pumps.
On the whole thing, showing this,
Yeah,
There
and
should be
50% on
laid
the
out,
buildings,
right.
and it's an increase on the pumps, do the pumps count or not?
Yeah, that would satisfy everybody.
okay, that's fine.
It works for me.
If you're expanding the pumps by
You-
50%,
Please, Mary, we've given you quite a long time. All right, so, motion to refer to the zoning board for interpretation?
so moved.
Yeah.
Second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Aye.
All right. And I just want to say one thing about pre-existing. If an owner tears down a building without knowing what's going to happen in the future, they lose the pre-existing. That's what our code says. If the owner is tearing down the building to build another building, that's not abandoning the building. So it's very nebulous as to what abandoning the building means. If you abandon your use, obviously in this particular case, this is not being abandoned. The building is existing. Whoever buys the property has the rights for pre-existing condition. But in other cases in the town, like somebody ripped down a building that was unsafe or had a fire, they lose their pre-existing rights because there's no plan in place, there's nothing before us to say that my intention of ripping down the building was to build one exactly like it in the place. So they lose all their pre-existing,
I believe there's
Rights.
also something in the ordinance that I saw.
Please,
I'm not an
okay.
expert on your
okay,
ordinance.
okay.
But no, there was something else in there about.
I know, but this is not
years
open to the,
non-use.
for discussion. I'm just making a comment, because people keep saying, well, this person lost their rights, this person didn't lose their rights. The code is clear on what that means, but leaves some room as to what abandoning means. So that's the word that they use in the code. It says if you abandon your building, that's what the code, I don't want to argue about it. I just want to state what I think is in the code. Okay? Arch, I don't want to argue.
What about the footprint?
I don't want to argue.
The footprint can grow?
I don't want to argue about things. I don't want to discuss things. I just want to tell you what I think my opinion is. Okay?
Okay, so it's going to a public hearing, it's going to ZBA,
Go, yeah.
so I think that's it for this for tonight, right?
Yep.
You guys have any comments on this?
Nope.
Go to the ZBA for an area variance.
For an
Yep.
area
And
variance,
while
yes.
I would say they're gonna interpret whether the pumps are necessary improvement.
Yes, they might decide it doesn't need one.
Okay.
Specifically, you want the zoning board to let this board know whether or not this project constitutes a 50%.
Exactly.
Yes,
Thank you.
that's it.
Right.
Thank you, Bruce.
Do you want to provide them with your calculations?
They're gonna get everything.
They're gonna, okay.
Okay. Do we have anything else on the agenda for tonight?
No.
Okay. In that case, I'd like to go into an executive session for a personnel issue. If everybody would please step outside except for Grace and Olivia.
You want me to stay? You want me to stay?
Yep.
So does that mean we're done at this point, or what?
You guys can leave, yeah, there's nothing, we're gonna adjourn after this. Just so everyone knows, we're going to adjourn after this, there's not gonna be any further business, so if you wanna hang out, you can, but that's actually the origin of social media, right there. That's here it all started, yeah. This is where Instagram began.
I'm not gonna watch it. I had the power to go live on TV whenever I want. I'd be so bad.
You do, don't you? Kind of.
MySpace was before.
Oh, yeah, remember MySpace?
I do remember fondly MySpace.
I always go to you for the meetings.
Are we good, Ellen? Yes, all right.
Find it.
The personnel issue was resolved to the satisfaction of the board, and the executive session was closed. And I am looking for a motion to close the meeting.
Motion to adjourn.
Adjourn, thank you.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So you're gonna find
These are mine. I'll come get them tomorrow.
No,
I think these are yours.
do you want me to just bring it upstairs and everything else? I'll bring it down one.
Sure, if you want.
Make life easier? Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah.
You need anything? You need help with anything else?
No.
You don't have to carry any of this nonsense to your car?
Have a good night.
Okay.
That was a very heavy.
Yeah, I know. Archaic